will help supply the trading post, old things from the past. Stuff you could never find in a modern day.
He wasn't just a star of mountain men, he was the mountain man. For nearly 50 years, Tom braved the cold, hunted to survive, and lived off the land where most wouldn't dare spend a single night. But one day, he disappeared from our screens. No farewell, no warning, just gone. What made this tough-as-nails survivalist walk away from the wilderness life he loved? Was it his age? Was it failing health? Or was there something deeper? Something much more tragic? In this video, we're diving deep into the untold story of Tom Orr, the man behind the legend, and revealing the heartbreaking truth fans never saw coming. Stick around till the very end, because what happened to Tom might just break your heart. Before Tom Orr, the mountain man.
Try to keep something between you and your target so you're not in the open.
Before the fame, before the cameras, and long before he became a household name on Mountain Men, Tom Orr was just a man chasing something few dare to pursue: true freedom. Tom Orr wasn't born in the wild, but the wild always called to him somehow. For many years, Tom was already living a life that most people would never dare try. His life was eventually captured for the television show about the Mountain Men, and millions got to know him. Tom Orr was a quiet legend in the making who had loved his life raw, fearless, and completely off the grid. He was a tough mountain man, but he also had a story few people knew about. It's a heartbreaking story, including deep sacrifice, physical pain, and a tragic turning point. But before we get into the details of everything that happened to him, let's start from where Tom's wild path began. Tom Orr was born in 1943 in Rockford, Illinois, a small town where people knew the value of hard work. Chaike Orr, his father, performed in the United States Wild West shows of the 1880s and early 1890s. He also participated in the famed 1920 show, The Bucking Horse Sale. This familial connection to frontier life instilled in Tom a passion for rugged living and traditional skills from an early age, and rodeo seemed to run through Tom's blood. By the time he was young, he was already a professional bronc rider, riding wild horses in rodeo arenas across the country. Rodeo riding wasn't just a sport for Tom. He did it for the adrenaline, the connection with animals, and the thrill of proving he could ride longer, stronger, and better than anyone else. By the early 1960s, Tom had climbed the ranks of the International Rodeo Association and established himself as a champion rider. Through the 1960s and 70s, Tom traveled the country riding in rodeos. He thrived on the excitement of the sport and consistently made it to the finals, ranking in the top 10 multiple times. His name became popular among riders for his skill, courage, and quiet determination. But rodeo riding isn't for the faint-hearted and comes with a lot of risk. Years of violent falls and broken bones took a toll on his body. Tom endured pain that most people can't even imagine. He would get patched up and go right back to the saddle. But deep inside, the pain made him question how long he could keep going. He knew this kind of life had an expiration date, and his body wouldn't be able to withstand the stress forever. Luck turned against Tom on Valentine's Day, 1970. At the age of 35, he found himself in the chute, perched upon a massive bull called Woolly Bugger. Usually, you're supposed to drop a finger in my bull rope, which means your hand is locked into the rope. But at that moment, while he was riding the bull, the chute opened and there was a big eruption. Skulls of man and beast collided, knocking Tom into unconsciousness. Bound tightly by the rope across the middle of the bull's back, Tom's hand pinned him to the thrashing animal. His legs and trunk were underneath the bull's hind legs, and it was bucking and stepping on him quite hard. Tom later admits it is the closest he has ever come to death inside a rodeo arena. Nancy watched from the stands as he was tossed violently for 2 agonizing minutes until they were finally able to sever the ropes that bound him. Tom left the arena on a stretcher and didn't regain consciousness for 3 hours, suffering a severe concussion and bruising over most of his body. Fate had something bleaker in store for the bull. The old woolly bugger also died 2 weeks later due to a concussion. While Tom returned to the chutes just a month after this near-death experience, he never regained his former success. He had to come to terms with the fact that it was time for him to quit, and so he did. In the 1981, as the injuries stacked up and the rodeo lifestyle began to wear thin, Tom decided to change everything. He retired from rodeo. With his wife Nancy, he packed up and moved far from the world he once knew into the mountains of northwestern Montana. It wasn't a vacation or a retirement, it was a complete reset. Just as the pitch and yaw of a bronc feed the spirit of a young man yearning for thrills, the rise and fall of a mountain feeds the soul of a man longing for peace. Tom and Nancy settled in a remote area in the lower 48 states near the Yaak Valley, with few neighbors and harsh winters. That place isn't easy to find on a map. It's cold, rough, and wild. Winters can drop to 30 below zero, and snowfall buries everything. There were no grocery stores down the street, no running water or electricity. It's not a place for the weak. It's where survival depends on skill, knowledge, and sheer willpower. But Tom isn't afraid. He had finally found what he'd always been looking for: peace, freedom, and nature. He and Nancy started building their lives from scratch. They chopped wood, hunted for food, and learned to live entirely off the land. Tom would spend hours setting traps, following animal tracks in the snow, and returning with pelts that would later be used to make clothes, blankets, or gear. As Tom settled deeper into his mountain life, he also mastered ancient skills. He was a skilled trapper and hunter, taking only what he needed and using every part of the animal. He learned to tan animal hides the old way, using smoke and hand tools, just like Native Americans had done for centuries. Most people had no idea how to do it, but Tom learned the craft and turned it into a way of living. He would skin animals, tan their hides using natural materials, and hand-make clothing, shoes, and gear. Every day brought new challenges, such as fixing the broken tools, fending off wild animals, or surviving bitter cold. But for Tom, it was perfect. He didn't need the outside world, nor did he miss the noise and chaos of the city. The forest silence, the crackle of a wood stove, and the closeness of his wife were all he needed. Soon, people began to hear about the old cowboy who lived on the hillside and made leather the traditional way. He wasn't trying to sell himself. People found his authenticity rare and refreshing. Nancy worked by his side every day. They made a perfect team. She handled chores, helped with hide preparation, and supported Tom's growing reputation as a traditional craftsman. She helped with everything, including farming, sewing, and even defending their cabin from wildlife. Their bond wasn't flashy or showy. It was deep and unshakable. You could see it in how they looked at each other and worked together without words. The Mountain Men TV show.
What you're going after, the better off you are. Oh, there's a fresh outdone.
Tom Orr never dreamed of becoming a TV star. He didn't go looking for fame, and he surely never imagined a camera crew would one day follow his every move. But in 2012, everything changed. The History Channel was launching a new series called Mountain Men, and they weren't looking for actors. They wanted real people living raw, off-the-grid lives. And Tom, he was the real deal. A man who had left modern comforts behind to carve out a life deep in the wilderness. It was exactly the kind of story they needed. So what is Mountain Men really about? The show follows a group of rugged individuals who've chosen to leave behind city life and embrace the unforgiving beauty of nature. From building their own shelters to hunting their own food, these men and women show what it truly means to survive. Whether it's the brutal winters of Alaska or the predator-filled forests of Montana, these adventurers rely on old-school skills, grit, and self-reliance to push through each season. And it's not all peaceful sunsets and quiet snowfalls. The show captures the full scope of wilderness living, from sudden snowstorms and surprise animal encounters to broken equipment and long stretches of isolation. Mountain Men proves that while the wilderness may offer freedom, that freedom comes with a cost. As the show says, the young blood and old hands alike must earn their wild existence against the worst odds that nature can stack against them. Now, Tom wasn't exactly eager to be filmed. A private man by nature, he only agreed on one condition. Everything had to be real. No acting, no drama, just honest living. And that's what made him stand out. The show taught viewers everything from tanning hides to trapping game. But more than that, it introduced us to a man who felt like he came from another century. And audiences loved him for it. Alongside other cast members like Eustace Conway, Marty Maiorato, Morgan Beasley, Jason Hawke, and several others, Tom Orr quickly became a fan favorite. His quiet humility, deep skill set, and simple philosophy of life struck a chord with millions. Soon, fame followed. Letters, emails, and even tourists started showing up. People wanted to meet him, talk to him, thank him. Some even sent gifts or asked for life advice. And while Tom was grateful, it was clear this level of attention was never what he had signed up for. The quiet life he'd built was starting to feel not so quiet anymore. Despite all the fanfare and the estimated net worth of $200,000 he earned through the show and his handmade gear, something had changed. The seasons were taking a toll. His body, once strong from rodeo days and mountain labor, began to wear down. Each winter felt colder, each chore a little harder. Though Tom never openly complained, it was obvious. The mountain man we all admired was slowing down. The tragic accident.
Okay.
Okay, that's good.
All right.
By the time Tom Orr reached his 70s, he was a living legend. A man who had built his life from the dirt thrived in the mountains when most wouldn't last a week. A tragic incident took a sharp turn in Tom's life. What started as another typical day in the Montana wilderness turned into a moment that would change Tom Orr's life forever and mark the beginning of his most painful chapter. It was midwinter, the kind that turned every breath into ice and every step into a challenge. Snow had piled high on the roof of Tom's cabin, a common issue in the mountains. If too much weight is gathered, it could cause real damage. That morning, Tom decided to go up and shovel off the excess snow. Nancy had urged him to wait, that maybe the weather would ease up and that perhaps someone could help later. But Tom was never one to sit around and wait. He grabbed his ladder, threw on his old boots, and climbed up with his shovel. He'd done it dozens of times before, but this time would be different. Tom lost his balance and fell from the roof. It wasn't a minor fall. He landed hard on frozen ground, striking his back and side. The impact knocked the wind out of him, and he couldn't even move momentarily. What exactly caused the fall is still unclear. Maybe the ladder slipped. Maybe the roof was icier than he thought. Or perhaps it gave out at the wrong moment after decades of pushing his body to the limit. Nancy rushed out as soon as she heard the thud. She found Tom groaning, trying to get up, but clearly in pain. He insisted he was fine, but Nancy could see otherwise. His ribs were bruised, his back was stiff, and his breathing was shallow. They had no ambulance nearby. There is no quick way to a hospital. So Nancy helped him inside, wrapped him in blankets, and watched him closely. But even as he tried to recover, something had changed in Tom. This wasn't just another bruise or sore muscle. This was deeper. Over the following days, Tom struggled to walk. He couldn't lift firewood as easily as he used to. Simple chores became difficult. He had always healed fast, but this time the pain lingered. Moreover, the fall shook his confidence. The man who had survived grizzly bear territory, freezing blizzards, and decades in isolation was suddenly afraid of climbing a ladder. He finally agreed to go to a clinic a few towns over. The doctors confirmed it. He had cracked ribs and some broken bones. Treatment wasn't urgent, but rest and therapy were essential. And for Tom, rest was one of the hardest things to accept. He returned home, but he wasn't the same. He moved more slowly. He talked less. His once bold spirit seemed dimmed. For the first time, Tom Orr wondered if this would mark the end of his wilderness life. This is where the heartbreak truly lives, not just in the toll on the body, but in the quiet understanding that a dream you gave your life to might finally be ending. As winter dragged on, the scar of the incident didn't leave. They had always known that mountain life was hard, but now they have realized the dangers that come with it. So many questions clouded their minds. What if Tom fell again? What if Nancy wasn't around to help? They had no children nearby and no neighbors within shouting distance. The accident made Tom realize he wasn't invincible. And as much as he loved the wild, he couldn't put Nancy at risk. She had been strong, loyal, and brave, but was aging too. She now deserved warmth, comfort, and a break from the constant fear of what might happen. For years, Tom and Nancy had ignored the warning signs. The aching joints, the long winters, the health scares, they blamed it all on aging. But deep down, they both knew they were pushing the limits. So they began to talk seriously about leaving the mountains and retiring somewhere closer to civilization. This wasn't a decision he made easily. For over 40 years, the Montana wilderness had been home. It was where he found peace, pride, and a sense of purpose. But now, every snowy day was a threat. Every chore was a risk. He hated to admit it, but it was time to think about a different kind of life. There and then, Tom and his wife took the tough decision to leave the mountains. After Season 9 of Mountain Men, fans noticed something. Tom Orr wasn't frequent on the show anymore. He hadn't made a big exit or announcement. He was fading away. Viewers were left with questions. Why is he not on as many episodes as before? Is he sick? Is he okay? In truth, Tom was recovering from the accident and quietly stepping back from public life. He and Nancy decided to move somewhere warmer, easier, and closer to family. No more harsh winters. No more risk of falling off a roof. Tom didn't take it as the end of his adventurous lifestyle, but as an adjustment. But for fans who had admired his wild, off-grid lifestyle, it felt like they were beginning to lose a piece of something rare and real: he leaving the mountain. After the accident, Tom Orr reduced his strenuous activities and started stepping away from the rugged life that made him famous. He was fading from Mountain Men, leaving millions of fans wondering what was happening behind the scenes. But while there seemed to be a setback, Tom's life didn't just pause. It entered a new, quieter chapter that would be better than his life in the mountains. Tom and his wife Nancy made a shocking decision. They packed their things and left the mountains of Montana after more than 40 years. They moved thousands of miles away to Florida, a place warmer, safer, and closer to family. It was a massive shift for someone who had spent nearly his entire adult life in the most remote corners of the American wilderness. But it was necessary. His body needed warmth, and his bones required rest. And after the accident, they couldn't risk staying there for another winter. Tom Orr's decision to leave the mountain was about survival. The man who had given his life to the wild had finally realized the wild could take it all away in one bad fall. It shocked many fans because Tom had presented a character of self-reliance all these years. He was a living example that people could live close to nature and far from noise. But now in Florida, that image didn't quite fit. Tom was still Tom, the mountain man, but his life was different now. The change in environment didn't just affect him physically, it also affected him mentally. For decades, Tom had lived with constant work and constant purpose. Every day in the wilderness had a reason. He was trapping, hunting, tanning hides, or preparing for the next storm. In Florida, the days moved more slowly. He still worked with his hands, making knives and crafts, but the sense of urgency had disappeared. That change affected him deeply. Though Tom rarely complained, those close to him noticed the difference. He was missing the cold, the challenge, and the rhythm of mountain life. And while Florida offered safety, it didn't provide the soulful scenery of nature. He'd watch the sunset and think of Montana's snow-covered trees. He'd hear traffic and long for the howls of wolves in the woods. But even more than the environment, Tom struggled with something that surprised him: the toll of fame. When Mountain Men became a hit, Tom's life went from private to public. He never asked to be a celebrity. He didn't enjoy interviews, he didn't chase endorsements, and he didn't play a part. He was just himself. But the attention on him grew as the show grew. Fans showed up at his cabin, letters poured in, and he couldn't go into town without someone recognizing him. At first, it was flattering. because people loved him for being real. But over time, the attention grew overwhelming. Tom wasn't comfortable with fame and didn't enjoy being treated like a television star. He didn't even watch most of the episodes he was in. For him, he loved living an unpredictable life. And after the accident, he found it even harder to handle the fame. Some people thought he left his mountain life due to financial issues, health concerns, or drama. The truth was simpler and sadder. He left the mountains after a death scare. He wanted to recover and find peace. So where was his wife Nancy in all this? Nancy, who had always been his quiet support, was deeply aware of the effect the change of environment had on Tom. She had also left everything behind: her home, routine, and the wild. And now, in Florida, she took on the role of comforter, companion, and protector. She saw Tom struggle with losing his old life, but she also saw the relief in his eyes on warm mornings when his bones didn't ache, and he could walk without slipping on ice. They leaned on each other like they always had. Nancy kept their small routines going, and together they found little joy in visits with neighbors, short trips, and crafting shows. They sold handmade items at local fairs, just like they used to. But underneath it all, both felt the distance from Montana and who they were. Tom had time to think now, a lot of time, and he thought about the life they had built. His early years as a rodeo rider, the first days in the wilderness when they didn't even have a proper roof, the blizzards, the joy of finishing a pair of perfectly tanned hides, even down to the first time a network producer called and asked to follow him with a camera. He also thought about how the accident reminded him that life could turn in a second. He had survived so much, near bear encounters, cold that could kill, injuries in the middle of nowhere. But that one fall, in a place he thought he knew like the back of his hand, had shaken his world. And now, in the quiet days in Florida, those memories come back often. But Tom wasn't bitter, nor did he live with regret. He often said, "I've lived a full life, more than most," and he meant it. Even though he is no longer involved in wild activities, Tom has never honestly stopped being a mountain man. He still makes knives and crafts leather, which he sells. Most importantly, he is still featured in the Mountain Men show. Friends say that Tom often lights up when talking about the old days. He didn't talk about fame, but rather freedom and the life he had built with his own hands. The wild that taught him everything he knew, and of a truth that never leaves a man. The mountain lived in him even if he no longer lived in the mountain. That kind of impact doesn't disappear when there's a change. Is Tom Orr still alive? As Tom Orr continued to age, there has been confusion, worry, and eventually, an internet-fueled rumor mill. It all came to a head in 2020 when a media outlet published a fake obituary claiming Tom Orr had passed away. It wasn't just a simple mistake. The obituary was detailed, painting a believable picture of his life and supposed death. It seemed real enough to fool many fans, who began sharing it widely on social media without stopping to verify the source. Tributes poured in, condolences were posted, and the rumors spread like wildfire. What made it worse was the timing. Around the same period, Tom had noticeably reduced his appearances on the show. After season 9, viewers noticed he wasn't as present as before. With his advanced age and history of a real medical emergency in season 11, where he struggled with severe breathing issues in the middle of the night, many fans assumed the worst. That particular episode revealed a worrying diagnosis. Tom's heart was weakening, and fluid had started building up in his lungs. Though he got medical help and pushed forward, the moment added fuel to the already spreading rumors about his death. The combination of a fake obituary and a documented health scare was enough to convince a large portion of the fan base that Tom was gone. Many media outlets, especially those prioritizing clicks over accuracy, ran with the story, further confusing audiences who had grown emotionally attached to the beloved mountain man. Then, in 2024, the rumor returned with new strength. This time, some sources reported that Tom had passed away peacefully in Lakeland, Florida, at the age of 81. They gave no apparent cause of death, just vague statements that left readers wondering if it was finally true. But at the same time, other sources firmly insisted that Tom Orr was alive and well, enjoying a quieter life away from the cameras, possibly retired, but certainly not gone. So what's the truth? Is Tom Orr still alive? Yes. As of now, Tom Orr is still alive, about 82 years old, and doing okay, considering all he's been through. He lives a quieter life now, far from the public eye. While many reality stars chase more fame or spin-off shows, Tom walked away from it all. Not out of defeat, but out of wisdom. He knows what matters most: his health, his wife, and the freedom to live on his terms. Still, there are health concerns. After a life spent outdoors, often in freezing temperatures and dangerous conditions, Tom's body has taken a beating. The accident that led to him relocating from the mountains was not just about broken bones. It was about what could have happened if help hadn't arrived in time. That fear still lingers. But mentally, Tom remains sharp. He still tells stories about his time in the mountains. He continues to teach people about traditional survival techniques. And whenever someone asks, he always says, "I don't regret a thing." So what do you think? Is Tom Orr truly better off living under the Florida sun, far away from the mountains that shaped his life? Or does a part of him still belong to the wild? And here's a question for you. What's the biggest lesson you've learned from the mountain man himself? We'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and tap that notification bell so you never miss out on our next deep dive. And before you go, check out the video on your screen. We think you'll love it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.